This is actually pretty crazy. I saw this chart recently, Luminate, and it compared all of the total minutes from all of the Disney Plus shows for the first 12 weeks of recent Star Wars shows. The Acolyte only has 5.5 weeks of data. So Acolyte's at the very bottom here. It goes from The Mandalorian at the top, Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, Ahsoka, and the Acolyte. Yikes. I know there's a healthy amount of probably pirating going on, but even still, I thought I heard a while ago that it's not even being pirated. But I really do think it speaks to just this pattern of mediocre storytelling. And this is continued to be the problem. Like, they had a concept, but they don't know how to carry it out. They don't know how to carry out a worthy addition to their new Star Wars EU. And in the meantime, clearly there's the decline in storytelling or just the quality or just their complete disregard to what the fans are saying. It's really sad. It's the biggest fan base, I would say. It's one of the biggest fan bases, and it is being underserved. Glenn Powell came out the other day. I read a quote from him, but he was basically saying that there's no problem in Hollywood that can't be solved by a really good movie. And if there's genres that you think aren't doing well, it's just because you're not serving the fans. You're not serving the fans of that genre. He mentioned rom-coms. Like, rom-coms, they found, I guess, weren't making any money. But was that really the case? Because I think probably streaming is what kind of ruined that. But romantic comedies used to be really cheap and would be successful. And obviously, at Glenn Powell's own new romantic comedy, Anyone But You, I think, it was over 200 million, but it was very cheap. So it was a huge success. And also, yeah, there are other genres that are just not being served right now. And I think Star Wars is one of them. And they just keep taking the wrong lessons from all these failures. Take the time to conceive of something that's quality. They need a good story to tell, not trying to just patch up all of these poorly conceived story elements from the movies, the sequel trilogy. And I think in the newest show, The Acolyte, they're like just taking the opportunity to just rewrite stuff, to repurpose concepts that were introduced to the prequel trilogy, but remake it into this new version, new canon. But man, it's just so bad. It's so boring. And it literally is not the show that Leslie Headland said was the show. She said she wanted to examine the Sith and the master apprentice dynamic, and how at some point the apprentice has to go and recruit an acolyte so he can take over and assume the master's power. But we're not seeing any of that. That stuff is taking place off screen almost. We're not seeing anything. We never saw the stranger or Khmer, the Darth Smilo Ren in this show. We never see him like recruiting May, the evil twin, supposedly evil twin. We never see any of that. We see him monologuing a bit at her, and even then it doesn't make sense. And then he's monologues later to Osha, and that doesn't make sense, and that doesn't really have it's not believable, as far as seduction into the dark side or whatever, because we don't even feel that he's trying to, I don't know, it doesn't know what it wants to be. It's just only centered around criticizing the Jedi and depicting the Jedi, and it's mostly about the Jedi, but depicting them as either corrupt politicians, liars, predators, overzealous cops, or just plain old incompetent. And that's all you see of all the Jedi here that's presented. It's just a scathing rebuke of the Jedi. It's not entertaining. When you don't have clear heroes and villains, like what are we even watching? For an IP like Star Wars, which is a space opera adventure based off of a traditional good versus evil kind of tale, it just seems so wishy-washy. Like, it doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't have a clear, definite vision for any of the characters' journeys. So it's really hard to watch when you realize it's just lack of regard to even craft a semi-entertaining show, let alone a Star Wars show. It looks like they edited it into a total mishmash. I know they also had trouble behind the scenes with this production. It seemed like it was in production for like 4 years, and even before all the writers and actors strike issues were going on, it was having significant problems. Why do they all have problems? I think Andor is the only one that didn't have issues. Rogue One, though, had issues. So the movie that it was based off of had notorious rewrites and edits and changing up directors midway through. I feel like that's all of the Star Wars IP now are just marked by these creative shakeups behind the scenes, and because they don't have a creative visionary in place. They don't have a plan. They don't know what they want to do. This is because they have someone in charge in Kathleen Kennedy who does not understand Star Wars. She fundamentally doesn't get it. They don't understand what the Jedi were. They're trying to define them. Like, we already have the prequel trilogy to kind of highlight the hubris, the flaws of the Jedi and how they missed Palpatine and the moves that were being made against them. Like, we already have that. They aren't saying anything new in that regard. They're just taking it a step further and making them even more corrupt. They're making them outright corrupt, very un-Jedi-like. They don't act like Jedi. They're very like thrown about by the whims of their emotions, especially Soul. There are some scenes where he's really good, but they were comparing him to Qui-Gon, and he's nothing like Qui-Gon, nothing like him. So it's like, why do you keep trying to redo this? Because that's clearly what they want for the show. They want to re-examine in this new way the Jedi recruitment, this botched Jedi recruitment of the twins, and that's just boring. And you're not saying anything new, you're not adding anything of depth to this universe. The show lacks conviction, as Anakin would say. Yes, exactly. And you can tell, like, there's this interview that Leslie Headland just did with The Nerdist, and it sounds like The Nerdist was just, it was covering all the questions and all the criticisms that fans have been having. And here's the thing. We have so many questions because the show doesn't definitively say anything. There is so much ambiguity. It's crazy. And most people don't know what's going on. They don't know the motivations for any of the characters. We don't know why any of the characters are making the choices that they do. So it's just this very, like we were saying too, this wishy-washy spectrum of morality. But the spectrum of morality isn't saying anything. She lacks conviction in the stories that she wants to tell, and in the particular each character's journey, because she doesn't know, she's not consistent with the characters and their motivations. So May, the so-called evil twin, she changes so much for no reason. She changes her mind for no reason so many times. And it's just crazy to try and watch this. I feel like I'm losing brain cells. Yeah, they train from infant school age, and these ones in the show have no discipline or anything like that. That one whining about wanting to go home. Oh, don't get me started on Torben. I mean, that was the reason that this Jedi isolated himself for 10 years before ultimately deciding, tell the Jedi Council everything or self-delete. He was given the choice. And when you find out what he was so guilty over, it's like he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. He was the Padawan in this situation. And yeah, he may have wanted to go home. And I have my issues with that too, because a hop, skip, and a jump. If he was that deeply unhappy, I don't know why they would just keep him there. Literally, you can 5 minutes and you're back to Coruscant. I don't know. It was very strange. Everything around Torben's story was strange. But there was nothing that he should have felt so guilty over that he would have made that decision to end his life. It made absolutely no sense. And honestly, it's Disney, Lucasfilm, and the people, the showrunners, and everyone involved in the show should be ashamed of themselves for that narrative choice. It doesn't make any sense, and it is horrible, inexcusably disturbing messaging. The Force is life. This is a Jedi's connection to the Force is a connection to life. And he wasn't living by just isolating himself, not talking to anyone for all this time. He wasn't living. He wasn't living up to the ideals of a Jedi before ultimately deciding to end it. So they really should be ashamed of themselves for that. For a show that's supposedly directed to young people, which are seeing increasing rates of depression, I just feel like that they should be ashamed for that horrible messaging.